Jai Swaminarayan. Let's read Panchālā 2 of the Vachanāmrut today. This passage is simply titled Sankhya and Yoga, which of course are two of the 6 classical schools of Indian philosophy. On Phagun Sudhi the 7th, Samvat 1877, or the 10th of March 1821, Sriji Maharaj was sitting on a large decorated cot that had been placed on a platform in Jina Bhai's darbar in Panchālā. Pardon me. He was wearing a white case and had covered himself with a white blanket. He had also tied a white phaeto around his head. At that time, an assembly of Paramhansas as well as an assembly of devotees from various places had gathered before him. Thereupon Sriji Maharaj said, "Please bring the Moksha Dharma scripture so that we can arrange for a discourse on the chapter of Sankhya and the chapter of Yoga." Thereupon the scripture was brought, and Nityanand Swami commenced the reading. Sriji Maharaj then said, "The followers of Yoga consider Jiva and Ishwar, the soul and the cosmic being, to be the 25th element, and Paramatma, the Supreme Self, to be the 26th element. On the other hand, followers of Sankhya include Jiva and Ishwar with the 24 elements. That is to say, that Jiva and Ishwar are comprised as some combination of them, and consider Paramatma, the Supreme Self, to be the 25th element. Of the two, the followers of Yoga believe that, regardless of however much one contemplates upon the Atma and the non-Atma, the self and the non-self, or however much one endeavors without accepting the refuge of the manifest form of God, one cannot attain liberation. On the other hand, followers of Sankhya believe that if one understands the ultimate fate of all devas, divine beings, humans, etc., and develops vairagya, material dispassion for the vishayas, for the experiences of the senses, and realizes one's Atma as transcending the 3 bodies, then, and by the way, I think the 3 bodies here refer to the physical body, the stula body, the subtle body, the sukshma body, and the causal body, the karan body. Then one becomes a mukta, a liberated being. But since each of these 2 types of beliefs have their own deficiencies, one should employ certain methods of interpretation for the purpose of resolving those deficiencies. The drawback of the Yoga doctrine is that both the Jiva and Ishwar have been considered as the 25th element, and both have been said to have bodies comprised of 24 elements. As a result, both the Jiva and Ishwar seem equal. This would suggest that the Sthula body is the same as Virat, the physical body of the cosmic being, and the Sukshma body is the same as Sutratma, the subtle body of the cosmic being, and the Karan body is the same as Avyakrit, the causal body of the cosmic being. It also suggests that the waking state is the same of that as sustenance, the dream state is the same as that of creation, and the deep sleep state is the same as that of dissolution. Moreover, Vishwa, Tejas, and Prajna should be considered equal to Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, respectively. Thus, the followers should worship the 26th element with such understanding. So, to remove this deficiency of equating Jiva and Ishwar, one should learn the following method of interpretation from a wise person. The 5 bhuts, which are the elements residing in the body of Ishwar, are known as Mahabhuts, the great elements, and those bhuts sustain the bodies of all jivas, of all souls. On the other hand, the 5 bhuts in the body of the jiva are minor and are incapable of sustaining others. Also, the jiva possesses limited knowledge compared to Ishvar, who is all-knowing. One should learn such a method of interpretation so that the jiva and Ishvar are not understood to be equal to each other. So of course, we can draw comparisons. If one has not done that, and some adversary were to ask a question in a debate, then one would find it difficult to reply. As a result, one's own understanding would become confused. But if one has learnt such a method, then even if someone were to raise a question, one would not allow the jiva and Ishwar to be considered as being equal to each other. Therefore, one should learn such a method of interpretation so that the jiva and Ishwar do not seem to be equal, and one should listen to words to that effect. Next, the drawback of the followers of the Sankhya doctrine is that they consider Paramatma, the Supreme Self, to be the 25th element, transcending the 24 elements. They consider the 24 elements as being false, asatya, and Paramatma as being satya. If that were so, who would attain that Paramatma? After all, the jiva, who is the attainer, is not considered distinct from the elements. Therefore, to remove that deficiency, one should learn the following method of interpretation from a wise person. Jiva and Ishwar have been included with the elements because those 24 elements cannot exist without the jiva and Ishwar. But in reality, jiva and Ishwar are distinct from those elements and do attain Paramatma. One should learn such a method of interpretation. If one has not done so, and an opponent in a debate were to ask a question, doubts would arise, i.e., one would think, if the elements are truly false, then what is the purpose of prescribing the observance of dharma, such as brahmacharya, which is restraining the vital energies in the bodies, often associated with celibacy and, more generally, conservation of thought, word, and deed, etc., and spiritual endeavors such as shravan, manan, nididhyas, etc., which are the means of acquiring knowledge, to attain Paramatma. Therefore, jiva and Ishwar have been included with the elements because they have attained oneness with the elements, but in reality they are totally distinct from those elements and do attain Paramatma. In this way, followers of Sankhya should learn such methods of interpretation from a wise sadhu, from a wise monk or spiritual aspirant. Moreover, the followers of yoga propound methods such as the following. Liberation is attained by meditating on the manifest form of the avatars, the descensions of God, such as Matsya, Katsha, Varaha, Nrsimha, Vaman, Ram, Krishna, etc. But the followers of Sankhya accept methods which claim that liberation is attained when one fully realizes the form of God through experience, as described by various Shruti scriptures. For example, as stated in the first verse of the 4th chapter of the 2nd canto of the Taittiriya Upanishad, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha, which means, from where speech returns along with the mind without having attained Brahman, i.e., God. Both doctrines are good and have been accepted by the great. One who follows both of them appropriately does attain the highest state. In both of these doctrines, the same spiritual endeavors have been prescribed, but the mode of worship in each is not the same. In fact, it is extremely different. Having spoken in this manner, Sriji Maharaj then told the Paramhansas, "Now, please sing devotional songs. Thereupon Muktanand Swami and some of the other Paramhansas commenced singing devotional songs to the accompaniment of musical instruments. Following this, Sriji Maharaj said, "Now, please stop the devotional songs. While you were singing, I thought over the principles of both Sankhya and Yoga. Please listen as I explain. For one who follows Yoga, the luminous divine form of God, which resides in Akshardham at the time of Adyantik Pralaya, a kind of dissolution at the end of various cycles of cosmology, is worthy of being meditated on. Moreover, God in the form of Prakriti Purush in primordial nature and consciousness is also worthy of being meditating on, albeit to a lesser extent. To a lesser extent than that, God in the form of the 24 elements, which have evolved from Prakriti Purush, is also worthy of being meditated on. To a lesser extent than that, Hiranyagarbha, which is another term for Brahma, the creator, in his form of a golden egg, which is what that Sanskrit term translates to. And to a lesser extent than that, Virat, the physical form of the cosmic being as the whole universe, who has evolved from the 24 elements, is also worthy of being meditated on. Still, to a lesser extent than that, Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the maintainer, Mahesh, the dissoluter, is that a word? Dissolver, destroyer, the one that brings dissolution of the cosmos, as well as the avatars, the descensions of God on this earth, such as Matsya, Kurma, Nursing, Varaha, etc., as well as Shaligram, and other murtis, divine images of God. These are all worthy of being meditated on. This I realized while thinking is the essence of the doctrine of yoga. Then I thought over the Sankhya doctrine. They have done away with all of those forms, and it appears that they believe the cause of all thoughts is the jiva, the soul, and since there is nothing as pure as the jiva, it is appropriate to meditate on the jiva. In order to refute this view of Sankhya, I again thought of yoga, specifically Purushottam Bhagwan, who transcends everything, has an anvai, a one-with relationship with Prakriti Purush and all other entities. Therefore, they are all God, all possess a divine form, are all Satya, real and worthy of being meditated on. Certain Vedic verses also support this fact. For example, the first verse of the 14th chapter of the 3rd canto of the Chandogya Upanishad, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, which states, "Indeed, all this," i.e. the whole universe, is a Brahman, i.e. the form of God. Also from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 19th verse of the 4th chapter of the 6th canto, Neha nanasti kinchana. There is nothing in this universe that is not the form of Brahman, i.e. God. And from the 20th verse of the 5th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavat, Idam hi Vishwam Bhagavan Ivetaro Yato Jagat Sthana Nirodha Sambhavadha. Which means, indeed, this universe is as if another form of God, who is the cause of the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the world. Thus, an aspirant who follows that path of yoga encounters no obstacles. Why? Because that path is easy and relies on the manifest form of God, Because of this, through that path, even an ordinary person can attain liberation without any difficulty. However, there is one drawback on that path. Prakriti, Purush, etc. are thought of as being the components of the all-transcending Purushottam Bhagwan. That is, the following belief could develop. Prakriti, Purush are components of God, and their components are Hiranyagarbha, Virat, etc. If such an understanding develops, then that is a major drawback, since one feels God is divisible and has components. However, God is, in fact, indivisible, without components, unchanging, imperishable, and whole. Therefore, such a misunderstanding should not be allowed to arise. Also, one should understand God is one and unparalleled, while others such as Prakriti, Purush, etc. are his devotees and meditate on him. That is why they are referred to as forms of God. Just as a great sadhu who meditates on God is known as a form of God, in the same way Prakriti, Purush, etc. are also forms of God. Moreover, Purushottam Sri Krishna, who transcends everything, himself assumes the forms of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, and assumes the avatars of Ram, Krishna, etc. Thus, he is worthy of being meditated on. If one has such an understanding, then that path of yoga is absolutely free of obstacles and is the best path. Now, the drawback of the Sānkhya doctrine is that it claims all that is grasped via the Antakaran and the Indriyas, the inner faculties of cognition, and the senses, are false, while all that is grasped through experience is Satya. Thereby, they propound all forms as being false, but along with that, they also consider the forms of God that have manifested to liberate the jivas as being false. In fact, they also view the forms of Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Sankarshan as being false. They only accept Vasudeva, who is Nirgun, without qualities. That is their major drawback. Therefore, it suits the followers of Sānkhya to believe, after imbibing the thoughts of Sānkhya and considering whatever has evolved from Prakriti Purush as being perishable, one should realize one's own Atma as being distinct from all, as being pure and Brahmarup of the form of the divine. Then, understanding the form of God that has manifested to liberate the jivas as being Satya, real, one should meditate on him. In this manner, there are two types of thoughts. These two types of thoughts can be known if one learns from someone who is wise, like me. Otherwise, even if one studies or listens to the scriptures, one cannot understand them. In reality, the teachings of yoga are actually for one who has become Brahmarup by initially having practiced thoughts of Sānkhya. Thus, it is said in the 54th verse of the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Na Shochati Na Kankshati Samah Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Labate Param. Which means one who has become Brahmarup remains joyful, grieves nothing, desires nothing, behaves equally with all beings, and attains my supreme bhakti, loving devotion. As well as the 10th verse of the 7th canto of the 7th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavat, Atma Ramascha Munayo Nirgrantha Apyurukrame Kurvan Atyahaitu kim bhaktim itham bhutaguno harihi, which means despite being engaged only in the Atma, i.e. having attained Atma realization, and despite having overcome all base natures, the Munis, the scholars, still offer selfless bhakti to God, because God possesses such divine qualities. As well as the 9th verse of the first chapter of the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavat. Harinishtito api nargunya utama shloka lilaya grhita cheta rajarshe akyanam yad adhitavan, which means, O King Parikshit, despite being perfectly poised in the nirgun state, without qualities, I, Shukadevji, the son of Vedvyas, compiler of the Vedas, having been attracted by the divine actions and incidents of God, studied the Srimad Bhagavat epic. In this way, the Sankhya doctrine is dependent on yoga. Why? Because through that Sankhya thought, the followers of Sankhya realize all Vishayas, experiences of the senses, that can be indulged in via the 5 Indriyas, the sense organs, and 4 Andhakaranas, inner faculties, which are distinct from one's own Atma, to be totally vain. Therefore, such a person is not enticed by any objects, nor do they become attached to them. Moreover, if someone were to say to them, "This object is extremely pleasurable," they would think, "It may be pleasurable, but it is perceived through the Indriyas and Andhakaran, and that which the Indriyas and Andhakaran perceives is asatya, unreal and perishable." Such is the firm understanding of a follower of Sankhya, who also realizes their own Atma as pure. Such a person should meditate on, worship, and offer bhakti, loving devotion to God according to the path of yoga. If they do not adopt this, that would be a major flaw in them. In this manner, I have described the eternal principles of the Sankhya scriptures and the Yoga scriptures, having thoroughly pondered over them. The unorthodox proponents of Yoga and Sankhya, however, have corrupted both paths. Those who are proponents of Yoga try to establish the truth of forms, and in the process they realize all people, the forms of Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, and Shiva, the maintainer and destroyer, as well as the forms of Ram, Krishna, and other avatars as equal to each other. Followers of Sankhya denounce all forms, and in the process they also denounce places of pilgrimage, observances, murtis, yam and niyam, ways to and to not conduct yourself, forms of dharma, righteous duties such as brahmacharya, restraining the vital energies, as well as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Ram, Krishna, and other avatars. Therefore, both the unorthodox followers of Sankhya and the unorthodox followers of Yoga have deviated from the correct path. As a result, they will be consigned to Narak, to lower realms. All right. Thank you for listening to the second passage from Panchālā of the Vachanāmrut. I hope that it was insightful for you. Jaya Swaminarayan.